Bienvenue to Bonjour Paris Live. Our online event series, free for Bonjour Paris members, offers expert lectures, discovery talks, and conversations about la vie française. In between your trips to France, we're here to inspire you. Bonjour Paris has been online since 1995, almost as old as the internet itself. Our website is packed with interesting articles about the culture and history of Paris. And now, thanks to the support of our growing membership base, we're able to showcase new offerings like video and online talks. For details about all the benefits of Bonjour Paris membership, visit our membership page on our website. Enjoy today's presentation and à bientôt!
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Bonjour Paris Live. I am Sylvia Davis, culture editor for France Media, and your host today. And today we have a very special talk with food critic Alexander Lobrano as he shares the latest culinary gems in Paris. And a little reminder, France Media calendar is waiting for you, with beautiful photos of France at francemedia.shop, francemedia.shop. So, we're ready. Let's get to it. I'll now invite Alec to join us. Hi, Alec. Welcome.
Hi, Julia. Thank you.
It's lovely to see you. I was so happy we get to have this talk just before the holidays and before it gets too busy. Right? So let me introduce you for anyone who doesn't know your work or hasn't seen your previous events. Alexander Lobrano grew up in Connecticut, lived in Boston, New York, and London before moving to Paris in 1986. He was European correspondent for Gourmet magazine from 1999 until its closing, and has written about food and travel for Saveur, Bon Appetit, Food and Wine, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, The Guardian, Travel and Leisure, the Financial Times, Condé Nast Traveler, and many other publications in the United States and the United Kingdom. He is the author of Hungry for Paris and Hungry for France, and his delightful memoir, My Place at the Table, in which he shared how he became one of Paris's most influential food critics. And the subject of this talk today is what's new in Paris. So whenever you're ready.
I am ready indeed. And one thing I'd like to say, a thought just went through my head listening to you sing my praises. This has been a rough year for the restaurants for lots of different reasons. The world is a slightly turbulent place. I'd just like to suggest that if you're at a loss for a gift, to give somebody a gift card for a meal or to take someone yourself to a favorite restaurant is, I think, just about the nicest gift anybody could get. You know, you don't have to worry about ugly reindeer sweaters or anything, jumpers. You can just make people wildly happy and spend some time together and not find yourself standing in Selfridges, I don't know, wondering whether or not your grandmother needs negligee or whatever. So I think food is a wonderful gift. And on that score too, Celia, I also wanted to hold up a book that I think is just brilliant. It's a new
Yes,
cookbook.
please.
It's a new cookbook. I hope you can all see it adequately.
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
If you lift it just a touch, there, perfect.
Okay. And the title is Chocolat, and it's a cookbook of chocolate recipes or Parisian desserts and other delights. Chocolate, Parisian desserts and other delights by a delightful writer named Alexandra Capenzano, who's quite an interesting woman. She grew up in Paris. Her mother is a very distinguished writer, Jane Kramer, who wrote the Letter from Paris, the New Yorker magazine, for years. And her father is a painter. Alexandra is a very graceful and wonderful writer and a fetishistically good cook. This is her new book, again, Chocolate, Parisian Desserts. And it's just come out, and I don't bake because I'd rather go out for dinner. but I have been fiddling around with this a little bit. The recipes are fail-safe, and even for somebody who's a bit of a fumble in the kitchen like I often am, I highly recommend it. So between a good meal in a restaurant and this wonderful cookbook, I think I've just saved you a lot of time. Yes, spaghetti.
That sounds lovely, and it's a love language food, isn't it?
It really is a love language, and I think that that's why even in this challenging time that we're living in, tumultuous times that we're living in, I think that there are two major things, especially in Paris, that I've been feeling this year. I think that there is a desire to, well, food reflects what we eat, and the restaurants we go to are always a reflection of what's going on in the world. And I've never felt this to be more true than this year in Paris. The rebirth, for example, of French Haute Cuisine, the first restaurant that we'll talk about, which is, I call it the new Haute Cuisine. And Haute Cuisine, just very quickly for anyone who is not familiar with that term, is the very top of the pyramid, the food pyramid, in terms of the most elaborate, often the most expensive cooking in France. And for a long time, it's been the preserve of a bunch of older men. And now, happily, the whole thing is opening up and it's blossoming in really fascinating new ways. There's a very talented chef who's opened a restaurant right in the heart, right near the Assemblée Nationale of all places. Romain Méta has opened a restaurant called Prevel on the left bank of Paris. And I think he's in our next slide, actually. Here we are.
That's right. Here we're showing the location.
And he's in the Rue Saint-Dominique. And he's a very interesting man. He and this just says so much about what is going on right now. This restaurant, if you look carefully in the middle of the photo of the dining room, you'll see a turnip. I think it's a turnip posed on an upturned glass with some water in it. So what he's doing there is he's using real vegetables as table ornaments instead of flowers that have been flown in, using a lot of jet fuel from faraway tropical countries where people aren't being paid enough money to pick them. His whole idea is quite ardently sustainability, zero food waste, and humble. I mean, he's head to tail, and he's also, he's kind of a provocateur. There's something. He's a real rebel. He worked for. He was trained by Alain Ducasse and worked for Alain Ducasse for a long time. He was at when Ducasse restaurant was still in the Hotel Plaza Athénée in Paris. Romain was there, and he was the lead chef for a culinary movement that proved to be quite visionary, that Ducasse and Méta tinkered with together, which is called la naturalité. And the idea of la naturalité, without making it sound too ponderous, is to eat as close to the ground as possible. In other words, eat foods that are not threatened with extinction, eat foods that are environmentally are gentle in terms of their cultivation, that don't require too much water, too much fertilizer, too much anything artificial. Eat seasonally, and eat a healthy diet as well, which means less meat, of course, less seafood as well, except for healthy things like oily fishes, sardines, and anchovies and things like that. And so these were the sort of the compass points of la naturalité. You could call it the natural cooking. The Plaza Athénée, which many of you might know on the Avenue Montaigne, it's one of the swankiest bits of Paris, and it was a sort of a iconoclastic thing to suddenly be doing a restaurant like this in one of the most luxurious hotels in the world. I think some people loved it, others didn't. I think that it was really pushing the envelope. Méta eventually left. Ducasse is no longer running the restaurant at the Place Athénée. that's a whole other story. But Medea was very, very much a man of his own convictions. He went off and cooked several other places, and now finally he's in Paris. He's hung out his own shingle, again in a very posh, bourgeois power precinct of Paris near the Assemblée Nationale. When I went to dinner by myself, because I like with a place like this to go up just alone and sit at a corner table, I love watching the dining room sometimes by myself. And it was stuffed with French politicians and cabinet ministers, which I thought, my God, if they are twigging to this type of cooking, who knew? I mean, this is really something quite amazing. And I was chatting with the waiter, and the waiter said, "Oh yes, many of these people have become regular since we opened." And Medea is that he likes powerful flavors. He likes sort of raw, punchy stuff. One of the things that I thought was a perfect dish, I think it's there, maybe one of those photographs. If not, you have to go to the restaurant and taste it yourself. It was roasted cabbage with a fig leaf gelée. In other words, he seasoned a aspic with fig leaves, and then also served it with caviar. A very improbable mixture of ingredients. I mean, so the taste of fig leaves, roasted cabbage, which can be very succulent and caramelized and delicious. And then the saltiness of the herring eggs. It's an absolutely delicious dish. I mean, that was for me a jolt of creativity, something never eaten before. And it was everything. It was different perfumes and flavors and textures and everything in one dish. And the meal continued in a pretty extraordinary way with chicken cooked in squid zinc with raw squid, ribbons of raw squid. All the way through the meal, there was that play of texture and the funkiness. I mean, some of these dishes were really funky but refined. And if that sounds contradictory, I can understand why you might think it does sound contradictory, but funky and refined actually can exist. And I think that looking toward the future, when we all know that we should be eating healthier, which is less meat, we should be eating more pulses, we should be looking at things like seitan and tofu and other proteins, non-animal protein sources. This is a very important restaurant because this shows that this message is understood and is being worked on at the very highest echelons of French cooking. So it frustrates me sometimes because I think the old brickbat about certain people is, if the cooking in France isn't what it was. Well, that's flatly wrong. The cooking is extraordinary today. And the idea of being able to create neck-snapping gastronomic pleasure with cabbage, I would never have thought of something like that. So I think I wanted to lead off with Lola because I have such respect and admiration for what he's doing. In a nutshell, it's showing that you can eat healthy and have as much gastronomic pleasure as you might expect from a meal of lobster, foie gras, and a great big fat steak or leg of lamb or some such. This is another way. This is another route to gastronomic pleasure. I like both, frankly, but it's nice to know that you can be virtuous without sacrificing a really good meal at the table. In a similar vein, the next pioneer I wanted to mention is a restaurant called Plénitude, which is at the Hotel Cheval Blanc, right on the banks of the Seine, near the Pont Neuf, right bang in the heart of Paris. And Arnaud Donquel is the chef there. And I was there recently. These are my little photographs. They had a lunch. One of the champagne houses had a lunch to celebrate the launch of one of their vintages. They nicely invited me to come along. The first dish that we had that day is the plate with the flowers and herbs and mushrooms and what have you on the right. And we ate that with sort of a creamy, yeasty champagne. It was a rainy day that day. It was sort of the first real day of autumn in France. There was light rain, and the sidewalks were the pavements were being plastered with falling bronze-colored chestnut leaves. And so I arrived at the meal thinking, oh, this is really a very autumnal day. And this was autumn on a plate. I mean, if you'd gone into the forest and decided to get down on all four knees and eat your way through the foliage in a forest after a rain during the autumn, you probably would have come across all these flavors, not this sublime. I mean, what he had there, he had all different types of mushrooms. He had wild herbs of one kind or another. I mean, he said to me, it's a little poem about autumn. Some chefs might say such a thing, and you'd think, oh dear, that's a bit on the pretentious side. No, because he's a very moving person. He always makes me think, actually, of Saint-Exupéry and Le Petit Prince, because his sense of wonderment when it comes to the possibilities of his own ingredients, he has such delight and such gentleness and such a lyrical gastronomic imagination, which one sees in that first photograph. In the second one there, we had, he made a smoked pumpkin coulis, which is in the middle of that dish. There were medallions of lobster there. There was also squid, and there were chestnuts. Again, this was a very temps sur temps, or very subtle, refined, meditative dish served with another champagne. It was absolutely spectacular. We'll jump over that gorgeous pear and finish the meal first before we get to the pear. And that is a photograph of a beautiful piece of John Dory, and with artichoke hearts and a broth of, if he just calls it autumn broth. I mean, he creates these broths. He's kind of, I mean, his fascination, he's a real saucier or a sauce maker. And from my point of view, the real genius of French gastronomy is to create those sauces, is to extract the flavors, reiterate them, and then dress the product with adorn the product with its own natural flavors that have been toyed with in a very delicate way. The sophistication and the refinement in these dishes was absolutely spectacular. I don't know, luckily enough for him, he has enough work to do with all these other dishes, which are so delicate and must hugely time consuming, I'm sure. He also has a fantastic pastry chef who he works with, and I want to give him his well, I'll get to him in a minute, but I'll tell you what that was, what we had there. He had a puff pastry that was wrapped, coiled around a pear that had been poached in a syrup of different citruses and spices like star anise, cinnamon, sort of retour des Indes. And I think then had been, there may have been a little bit of wine. It had a slightly Christmassy feel, like a pomander ball, but very, very delicate. And then this spiraled, flaky pastry. That was a work of art. I mean, when these were served at the table, stop talking. I mean, everybody was thinking of these things and thinking, do I dare cut that open? It's so beautiful. This is, for me, this is the new haute cuisine. If you look at all four of these photographs, all of this food was incredibly healthy. But the end of this meal, since it was a lunch and everybody had to rush off to do the things during the day, what everyone was saying to each other when we left the table is, what an ethereal and, it's light as a feather, this food. I mean, we've had all this food and some nice wines, but I'm not going to go back to my desk and suddenly slump over on my keyboard. I've had too much to eat. Sorry about that. Let me just, I don't want to do anything and lose the sound for you. So please use that email.
Yeah. Sounds like it's perfect.
Okay. So Plénitude also, I want to say, one of the questions I'm asked most often, and I do get to this, I think we've done this before, as Sylvia knows, and I'm very sympathetic to this. People say, where should we go for our special meal? Because God forbid you make a mistake and spend a lot of money and not have a good meal. And the special meal, since I don't know all of you, from my point of view, has to be something that's almost bulletproof in terms of a place that you'll be warmly received, waited on with attention, charm, good humor, and the feeling that you're truly welcome and that the people who come to your table are eager for you to enjoy your meal. The food, I think, should be something ecstatically wonderful. And it should feel that it's it's an extravagance. If it's an extravagance, it's something that should be worth it, though. It should be something that when you're sitting there in the tube, late to work on a rainy morning in February, you can drift back to this meal and think, good Lord, it really put a hole in my wallet, but I'll never forget it as long as I live. So I would suggest Plénitude. It's difficult to get a reservation there. It has to be done on their website, the Cheval Blanc Hotel in Paris. You can book through the website. It's a spectacular meal. It's easier to get in at lunchtime, of course, than it is at dinner. But that is my current suggestion for a bulletproof special occasion meal in Paris if you want haute cuisine food. That being said, this restaurant has 3 Michelin stars. I would also say that I think at this point in time in Paris, there are bushels of other excellent Michelin 1-star restaurants that won't put as big a hole in your pocket, and you'll have a wonderful meal as well. So it's entirely up to you to the level of extravagance that you feel is decent, affordable, and what the occasion might be. But Plénitude is a wonderful address, as is Prével. Prével's a lot of fun and very provocative. And Plénitude is that just sort of amazingly special occasion place, where, as I said, that just becomes sort of like like when you brand a horse or a cow or something, the memory is that deep and that powerful, it'll always stay with you. But let's have a look at some of the new talent in Paris. There are other people who are coming. Oh, this is a fun one too. Paris now is, I think, Oscar Wilde said, and I'll paraphrase him because I'm sure I'll botch the quote, but it's something along the lines of, when good Americans die, they hope they'll go to Paris. Or when good Americans die, they will go to Paris. But in other words, that between America and France, I don't know that it's been particularly reciprocal, but the Americans have been besotted with Paris ever since the United States existed. So that's to say 250 years. And there has been every generation of Americans falls in Paris for different reasons and all over again. Now the relationship has rather amazingly enough become somewhat reciprocally gastronomic. The younger French, traveled a lot in the U.S. The current administration in Washington notwithstanding, many of them have enjoyed the time they spent in America and have actually ended up liking American food. And yes, it exists. There are wonderful things to eat in America aside from pizza and hamburgers and hot dogs. So with that in mind, we have these 2 very talented female chefs. This is a fascinating story. La Reine, which is sort of a pun on the idea of a bus stop, is just down the street from the Musée d'Orsay. Again, in a very plummy part of Paris, in the center of the arrondissement de left bank, in an old cafe. And it was created by 2 different people here they are. There is Mashama Bailey, who's the wonderful lady with the beautiful smile and the black dress in front of the bar, and the very nice guy behind the bar, Johno Morisano. They're both Native Americans, or Native Yorkers, excuse me. And Mashama's gastronomic background is pretty fascinating. Her family is from the deep south, the Carolinas and Georgia on the coast. They had migrated to New York City, like many Black or African Americans did in the 50s, 40s, 50s, even earlier. But she'd go back down south often, and so she had a memory of the real cooking. There's real cooking in that part of the United States. They call it Southern Port Coastal cooking. That sounds like a lot. And what that means is that the ports in the South through which indigo and rice and cotton and, sorry about that, other things were exported to Europe were the portals of contact between these then British colonies, and the rest of the world. And they were very cosmopolitan because in the scoured history of the United States, everybody thinks it was all just Anglo-Saxons, but it wasn't. I mean, these port towns were really hugely cosmopolitan with people from all over the world. They had regular trading contacts with India. They had all sorts of things, so that they were portals of gastronomic invention and innovation. That's the kitchen that this lovely woman grew up eating, the food she grew up eating. They started a restaurant. Their original restaurant is called The Gray, and it's in the old bus station of Savannah, Georgia, one of the most beautiful cities in the United States. And the bus station, when it was built, was segregated. So Black people on one side and whites on the other, including separate toilets and waiting rooms and everything else. When the bus station closed, they had the idea to turn it into a restaurant. And they turned it into sort of a living history museum on top of everything else. She's gone on to win Best Chef in the southeastern part of America. They've written cookbooks. They've done all kinds of stuff. But like so many Americans, and New Yorkers particularly, they've had this dream of Paris. And so rather insanely, when Johno Morisano told me that they wanted to open a restaurant, and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I love the idea that you want to come over here and serve this more sophisticated Southern American food, but you're going to have to prepare people for it because they don't know it. No one even knows that it exists. And see, you've got your work set out for you." And he kind of took me to heart because before the restaurant opened, they brought over the most famous Afro-American food historian to lecture, to give seminar or sort of lectures to the staff for 2 or 3 days. And she lectured on the Afro-American experience in Paris, because so many Afro-Americans like Josephine Davis and James Baldwin and other people escaped the racism in America. They came to Paris to be free. And so there were very deep connections between Afro-Americans and Paris. And then the following lecture, she was talking about the connections between Afro-American food in Africa and other Creole places, including islands, French islands in the Indian Ocean and what have you. The lectures, the staff was all lit up by this. And they had hundreds of questions for her. And I thought it was genius that they did this. So now the doors were open. They've gotten very surprisingly good reviews in the French newspapers. And a couple of the dishes that they're serving, the one that is best known is in the lower right-hand corner here. And this is called chicken capitaine. And it's such an interesting dish. It's kind of like curried chicken with vadouvan, which is a spice mixture that you find in France. But it's also garnished with slivered roasted almonds and currants, which I think of as being sort of a very medieval Northern European taste palette. And the chicken is braised in this, and it's succulent, absolutely delicious with rice. A little bit further over, I don't know. Oh, I guess that's two pictures of the same thing. On the left, it's easier to see. That's one of her favorite. That's called chess pie. And I think there's cornmeal in that, molasses and other things. And that's a very, very American thing, very sweet. So there they are. They're at the gate. And what they're finding is what Mashama has wanted to do. She said they're French cooking and American cooking, real American cooking, are cousins. They just didn't know it yet. So he's doing all of this work. She said, it's this mind-boggling experience of actually cooking with French ingredients to make her recipes. And she said the produce is so brilliant in France that it's kicking the food up into a whole new level of stuff. She knows her way around France because she actually did a stage or a long stint at Anne Willen's cooking school in Burgundy, Anne Willen being the famous British chef. So this is a wonderful story. This is a happy story. The French and the people in the neighborhood become very curious and are coming in. And so, the world goes around and what better place to get to know any people or culture than to sit down at their table. So I find this a very happy new address in Paris for ever so many different reasons. And again, it's a great place for lunch if you are if you're hungry after a visit to the Musée d'Orsay. You can book this one online too. It's just maybe 5 minutes down the street. And it's fun, it's lively, it's noisy. It's not very expensive, and it's probably food you've never tasted before. So bear that in mind if you're going to be in Paris anytime soon. And now we will cross the Seine to the other American in Paris, the delightful Carrie Solomon, who is a native of Traverse City, Michigan, which is where the Italian-American chef Mario Batali, who's been on television a lot, is also from. Carrie's the blonde in the gray apron, and one of her associates to her left, Dawn, is from Los Angeles. Carrie's lived in Paris for 20 years. She's extremely accomplished. She came here as an au pair girl, fell in love with Paris, the French language, French culture, French food, and just really went at it. She has written many cookbooks, excellent cookbooks. She had for a long time a column in Elle à Table, which is the gastronomic version of Elle magazine, which is sold in France, which she wrote in French. She has a catering company. She was a consultant for the city of Paris when she was asked to create the menus for the 2 vegetarian menus that are served in the public schools at lunchtime every week. By law, in the public schools in Paris, there have to be 2 vegetarian meals now. They want the children to be learning how to eat vegetarian food. So she said to me when she told me about it, she said that her goal was to create recipes that were unbelievably delicious so the kids would want to eat this food and didn't feel that they were being lectured to. And she said, I have one of those big, loud American palates. She said, growing up in America, so many different kitchens in some sort of nominal way. I mean, because it's a country of immigration, of course, and so it should be. And so she said, I can play. I have a really big gastronomic keyboard, but she describes her cooking as being California meets the Mediterranean, and which means a lot of plant food. She doesn't ban meat from her cooking, but she does. She goes all around the Mediterranean making different things. And she likes Greek and Italian and Spain and Basque country, and it changes all the time. She makes courgette fritters. She'll make ajo blanco, the Spanish almond soup. Her food's absolutely delicious. She's in Leal, It's not expensive. If you're traveling alone, one of the things that's nice in this restaurant, there's a large, comfortable, spacious counter. If you just wanted to pop in and have a meal by yourself, she's very involved with natural and organic wines. And she said, I'm trying to, she said, if I have a goal, my goal, rather like Roma Medea, is to show people that healthy eating doesn't mean privation in terms of gastronomic pleasure. And I think that's really, really the flag that's snapping in the wind in Paris right now. And it's a wonderful thing because it's really true. It's just rethinking things. I mean, so many of us were busy and we'd like to have more time to cook, but we don't. So it's having to learn new things that we can make to eat at home and or go to restaurants where we'll find inspiration and see how this type of cooking can be done. As she said, she has 2 daughters, and she said, she's a chef and she's all these other activities. And she said, I have a half an hour to cook dinner every night for my girls when I get home. So she said, I'm very sympathetic to the time pressures of people. And that's why I think her cookbooks are so good. They're sold on Amazon, Amazon.co.uk. And so Chez Carrie is, I think, a terrific restaurant. And again, both this restaurant and Hey are putting paid to the idea that you don't find good food in America. And I think that now, in a funny kind of way, there is a big American influence on French cooking. I forgot to mention that the most famous American haute cuisine chef is a guy named Dan Barber, who got involved like Romain Méta with seasonal, no waste, all locally grown stuff. And when I went to Prevel, which is the first restaurant we spoke about, Dan Barber was sitting in the dining room with 2 friends. It didn't surprise me to see him there.
So thank you very, very much, Alec, for adding these.
Of course.
And thank you so much and I hope you could come back soon to tell us more. Remember, everybody, that you can follow Alec's work on alexanderlobrano.com and on his Instagram, which always makes you very hungry, Alec Lobrano, with beautiful photos. And you can access his book by scanning this QR code on your phone. And I think we don't have any questions, Alec. Everybody's just so focused on what you were saying. We could sit here for hours and listening to these.
I don't want to hold people kept.
Oh yeah, no, I have no. I'm sure nobody minds going over the time. So thank you very, very much, Alec, and I hope you come back soon. And everyone, thank you for your participation, and join us again on December 4th. We have a champagne-themed event with Andres Medrano, certified wine educator, who will show us how to decode champagne labels and tips to select the perfect bottle. So just in time for the lead up to the holidays. So whether it's for entertaining or gifting, and from big brand name champagne houses to small producers. So we hope to see you back again here on December 4th. And until then, from all of us at Bonjour Paris, merci. Merci, Alec.
Grand plaisir. Merci, Sylvia.
Merci infiniment. And à très bientôt.
À bientôt.